What's up, everybody? This is Dave for Fratello.
Bar kidding. What is this, a skateboarding show?
What's up, everybody? This is Dave for Fratello. Today I'm here with my good friend Rob Nuds, and we're here to talk about a very exciting project, which is the NOMOS Weltzeit, the Hague Edition for Fratello. Rob, it is good to see you.
Good to see you too, mate. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
No problem at all. This one I've been quite excited to have a chat about, because this is quite a personal project for you, really, isn't it? But rather than just jumping straight in, let's start at the beginning. How did Nudsy break into the secretive world that is watchmaking? Tell us a little bit about that.
How did I get into watchmaking?
Yeah.
What, right back to the very beginning?
Right back to the very start.
Well, goodness me, we don't have all day, but it started off about almost 20 years ago now. Yeah. Amazingly, I was 17, and my girlfriend at the time worked at H. Samuel's, a jeweller's in Manchester. That you know Manchester very well, of course.
I do.
And I needed a summer job. So I went along and got the job there, and I became, for no good reason, the watch specialist. And I mean, really, it was poor. It was a baptism of fire. I spent a few years changing straps and batteries and becoming more acquainted with, the industry in general, and entry-level brands, as was that retailer's fare. And I fell in love with the idea of being a watchmaker. It was either that or tailoring for me, so I was always interested in those two sort of similar gentlemanly crafts.
I mean, you haven't given up on the tailoring either.
No, not entirely, but I decided that watchmaking was going to be the focus. So after university, which I only attended because I lost a bet, I decided to train as a watchmaker, and eventually got sponsorship, did my apprenticeship with Omega, and then after that found myself writing about watches, originally for a blog to watch, now of course for Fratello, and in between those two stints in the media I worked for NOMOS itself in the retail network. So lots of roundabout little twists and turns in the career, but probably the most significant jump was going from the bench to the retail network with NOMOS, and that's kind of how we got to this point ultimately.
So what was it you actually did for NOMOS? Because I mean,
I ask myself that question.
It's quite interesting for the viewers, I'm sure, to be able to peek behind the curtain and know kind of what goes on. So what was it you did when you say, I worked for NOMOS?
So I was managing the retail network, initially just in the UK and, Ireland nominally, but when I first came on board we didn't have any retailers in Ireland. That was one point of focus. After a good first year, I ended up moving into the Dutch market, which was my first expansion, and then I took over Scandinavia and then Eastern Europe, and so we barreled Greece into that as well. And afterwards I started training the retailers in North America, so the US and Canada. And in my last year or so of the company, I spent most of my time in the States, traveling around, 6 flights a week, several time zones.
No paperwork to fill out that time though?
No, it's really straightforward. It's almost impossible to countenance how that job would look right now. I mean, I'm still obviously in touch with my old colleagues and good friends with many of them in the same kind of field, and what COVID did to their daily lives was unbelievable. It's not like our jobs now, we can do them remotely quite comfortably, and thank goodness we're able to travel and talk to one another face to face again now. But we've been working over Zoom for a year and a half, and it's been fine. Yeah, it's been trying, but it hasn't really disrupted what we do too significantly. But for the people that spend their lives on the road, as I did, it is a complete culture shift, and really in those departments it's where the knock-on effects of the industry are perhaps most felt, because you have to figure out new ways to maintain that very important connection between a brand and a retailer. And although it seems like the digital pathways that we have available to us are enough, watchmaking is still an industry built very much on emotion and on relationships, and remaining present in the minds of retailers that aren't just selling your brand. So when I was in the States, I was traveling around, and I was one man most of the time. We got some more employees, and I trained some of those on the road as well. But other brands have regional representatives. So that was even the case in the UK. Tag Heuer has a North England representative, and they will visit their retailers once a month. I was unable to do that with NOMOS because the network was spread far and wide, and in the States you can imagine it's even further. So without that contact time, without being able to be in front of people and be present in their minds and hearts, occasionally we hope, it was very difficult. And yeah, we've seen some fascinating changes, and yeah, well, crisis forces us to evolve, and the industry certainly has in the last 18 months.
Cool. I imagine then, whilst you were jet-setting about the world...
I'll make it sound more glamorous than it was, mate.
That you obviously probably wore some kind of NOMOS watch.
Yeah.
Was it the obvious choice here?
It was the obvious choice, and I was very lucky to get it. So the obvious choice is the Weltzeit that...
of course.
Well, not this exact model, but yeah, the one that everybody knows from the launch days. I had a model that I managed to get on my wrist because it was unsaleable.
How so?
Well, you know, when every watch company is producing pieces, you either get QC failures or you get sample pieces that get knocked about and you can't sell them, and it's really not worth the time and money to refinish them for sale. So they go into these trays that just sit in a safe, and they would sit there forever if a brand can't find a use for them. And NOMOS used these watches as staff loan pieces. So when you start at the company, you could take a watch from this tray, and you were allowed to pick what you wanted, whatever they had in the safe. They almost never had a Weltzeit because Weltzeits are really rarer than hen's teeth. It's a common, commonly desired. I know, it's great, isn't it? A commonly desired movement, a commonly desired watch in general, and it's also the hardest to make. It's the hardest to make technically, and it's the hardest to make aesthetically. The case is the most complicated. The dial has 4 separate dial components. And so these things, if you had a Weltzeit that wasn't itself saleable, you would strip it down and you would repurpose those parts in any way you could. So if the dial was okay, you'd keep hold of the dial. If the case was okay, you'd keep hold of the case. For some reason, I think this piece had been assembled like last minute for a show, and it had a case and a dial and a movement that didn't match. They were from different generations because as the collection developed, NOMOS made subtle changes here and there. Like the earliest Weltzeits, instead of the house icon at 3 o'clock, they had Heimat written on the dial, which means like home time or home place. So they got rid of that. They put the house icon on there, for example. They changed some of the galvanizing processes for the dial to make it more uniform and just more aesthetically pleasing, because there's a real nice like particulated luster to NOMOS dials, which is hard to appreciate from the catalogue. You got to see them on your wrist and see them in natural lights. And also they made some changes to the movement, which originally was ruthenium plated, so it was like dark. And then they moved over to like a standard like white rhodium. Yeah, mine had, what did it have? It had the new dial. It wasn't the best example of a new dial, actually. I think it would have failed QC. There was sort of like a shimmer to it, which I grew to love. But there was that, and it had a ruthenium-plated movement with a rhodium-plated rotor weight.
Okay.
So it was a bit of a mishmash.
Bit of a Frankenstein's monster then, really.
Yeah, and it had only been done just sort of like to give an example to like journalists. It was never for photography. It was never to be loaned out. And one day it would have been broken down and
so had you not picked it, it would have ceased. That model that started this whole kind of real journey for you, I guess, would have ceased to exist. So had you gone a day later or 2 days later, we may not be sitting here today.
Well, I remember the woman in logistics with whom I was having this debate over which watch I would get was very, very reluctant to let me take it, because she knew that, like, you know, that would be sought after sooner rather than later. Someone would need a spare lug, or somebody would need a spare 24-hour dial, and they could come and harvest it from this watch. And I was like, I was quite rude, I think, actually, at the time. I was really adamant.
I don't find that hard to believe.
I've loved the Weltzeit from like many moons before my time with NOMOS. So seeing one there, my eyes popped out on stalks, and I was like, I gotta take this.
It shall be mine.
It shall be mine, and it was mine for 2 years. And the reference number on the back of it was 586.
If you still remember that.
Well, I'll never forget it. It was, It's a long story, but the watch is no longer in my collection, and I needed it to replace it with something.
So I was going to ask, do you think they'd have noticed it if you permanently borrowed it? But it sounds
I tried
like
to
they
steal
definitely
it.
would.
I tried to steal it many times.
No, also, if you're listening, you didn't.
I really did. I tried to like go missing in the States or like miss flights and pretend it was lost in luggage here, there, and everywhere. But then I had an addiction to photographing the damn thing, so it ended up popping on Instagram.
Well, it is quite a photogenic watch.
It really is. It really is, because it's one of those mesmerizing ones. I've said this about the case before. I said it in the launch video. It's one of those components which just interests me endlessly. I mean, it's a really complicated case. We won't dive into that again now, like we talked about it in the other video that we did. But it's just fascinating. It's a sculptural piece of art on the wrist. So yeah.
I know that you could probably talk for a long time about the next thing I'm going to ask you, so try and keep it condensed here.
Yes, boss.
But what is it about the watch that you love so much? And why?
I love everything about it, to be quite frank. I mean, the aesthetics, you know, they'll be to some people's liking, they won't be to other people's liking, that's fine. But this watch is supremely well designed, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, I can't but agree with that.
Yeah, its layout is great. It's the format in which it presents the necessary information, so the 2 time zones, is pretty unique. You know, I mean, there's a lot of watches that have 2 time zone functionality, but this one, doing it with the small 24-hour disc for your home time at 3 o'clock, and the movable city ring that jumps simultaneously.
And if you want to do that now, the click is very satisfying.
It's click. Nice action on the pusher, as Mike would say if he were here with us now. Our good friend Mike Stockton, one of his old catchphrases. I love that. I love the case. I love the complexity of it, and the subtle complexity.
Yeah.
You know, there are watches that really scream at you about how impressive they are. And clocks as well, for example, like this beautiful example we have between us. Like, it's majestically complicated. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to bamboozle you from a distance.
I guess it's kind of like why people love magic shows, for example. As a kid, I'm sure we all loved magic. It's the not knowing and the not understanding how it works and what's going on, which keeps us so engaged and enthralled by it. And the moment that you learn the secrets, maybe, I guess, is where you lose the magic a bit.
Yeah, quite so. But then, if NOMOS is maybe not like a traditional magic trick, as it's not trying to sort of wow you or blow you away. It's trying to interest you on a very sort of low burn level for a long time. I mean, it is an intellectual brand. It requires patience, and it requires study, and it requires relationship building. So in some ways, it's a bit of a sort of metaphor for the watchmaking industry en masse. But that's what I love about these watches. They are incredibly basic to look at in a catalogue, and it leads many people to dismiss them. It leads people to say, well, why would I spend $2,000 on a NOMOS Tangenta? It's just a time only watch. It's very simple. But of course it's a design classic.
Yeah.
That watch has remained unchanged in the collection since 1992.
For good reason.
Yeah, for good reason, exactly. It perfectly extols the Bauhaus ideals, which were taken by Weltzeit when he designed the NOMOS Zurich Weltzeit, and turned into something completely different, and something endlessly entertaining, for me at least. I get it from the dial, I get it from the case, I get it from the wearing experience. Because bear in mind, this thing is only 39.9 millimeters in diameter, 10.9 thick, 49 millimeter lug to lug. It's not a big watch by any stretch of the imagination, but it has character and presence.
Absolutely.
Plenty, at least in my opinion.
So I mean, I know you're a little bit like me, and you're never usually fully satisfied with an off-the-shelf watch. There's always something you're going to go,
yeah,
I could maybe do that a little bit differently, or I would do that a little bit differently. So was there anything you ever you looked at the Weltzeit you had on your wrist as you were traveling the world working with NOMOS, thinking, if I had a blank canvas, this is what I would do with it?
Well, yeah, we do like to be critical, right? And we have our tropes, the things that we like coatings, because they react so differently to light. So it's not even so much that you need all of the dials to match, like when they're out of the case together lying flat. You need them to match when they're assembled.
So
when
that
those
kind of
depths,
the cohesiveness when they're all together.
So I
guess that's quite difficult to necessarily kind of pick up on until it's all assembled, which is obviously more time and more cost.
Right, exactly, which is why at one point NOMOS was so far behind with the supply of the Weltzeit Blau, because it was so much harder to get the blues all to look right next to one another, that they had to spend hours and hours and hours reassembling dials and color matching all these components, because we've had this experience ourselves with the Chapek. You know, these processes, these color application processes, they aren't really pure science. Like, they're not bankable results.
No.
You have to kind of roll the dice a bit and hope, and you don't always get these consistent pieces. People often think that like luxury watchmaking is just an idea hewn by God instantly in a moment, and that it is perfection.
It's not.
But it's made by people. It's made by
Yeah.
craftsmen and women who have to really sometimes wrestle with these components and these ideas to bring them to life. So yeah, it was hard work to get the standard one right. But I thought, you know what, this style is all about depth and it's about light interplay. And if we break up the consistency, we solve one of the biggest problems immediately. When you introduce shadow deliberately to the design, it takes away perhaps not its greatest flaw, but certainly the most difficult hurdle to surmount in the creation process. So a panda dial is an established thing.
It's classic.
It's a classic
Timeless.
look. So I mean, take the sub dial, make it black, fine. Make the outside ring black to make it like mesh in, to connect those two elements. So what you're doing is you're tying the outside to the inside. You're pulling the eye towards the center of a dial as you normally would, with respect to shadow and the interplay of light on different galvanic surfaces. So I had this idea and I thought, oh, this is actually going to work. Like, there's a real reason why it will work. It's not just me going, make it yellow. No offense, great idea. Do a yellow Weltzeit. But yeah, it was informed by a notion at that time, because I had no physical proof it would work, but a notion that it would improve the overall aesthetic of the watch.
And obviously, as we know, despite all your passion and your idea to do this, NOMOS didn't move forward with that. What did you do instead? Did that just kind of get swept under the carpet and the passion lay there burning, or did you do something instead?
The passion's always burning. That's a serious problem with me. You can feel it on the inside, always. But first and foremost, you know...
That's just indigestion.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I think it is. All that Dutch cheese I've been eating, still not growing none, unfortunately. But the problem of not like having that dial taken seriously was a small one at the time. You know, first and foremost...
Did it hurt a little bit?
Yeah, of course. I'm a prideful guy, and I was convinced that it was an idea. Oh, goodness, I'm becoming very European. An idea worth taking seriously. But I'm a professional first and foremost.
Yeah.
I had a job to do. I was there, like, I wasn't the boss. I wasn't there to dictate to anybody. I wasn't even a designer. I was just some idiot on the road that had spent a long time thinking about a watch he was in love with. And I had far less experience in watch design then than I do now. You know, having worked now with many brands on different projects, like in front of and behind the scenes, it's it's something I feel very comfortable speaking with some degree of, if not authority, at least experience on. But at the time, I just accepted it. Yeah, it hurt, and I thought it was a missed opportunity. But it wasn't really a hard no. It was just a not now. And so, I kept it in the back of my mind. And at the time, I was working on concepts for a new special edition, for the third special edition for Ace Jewelers in Amsterdam.
Okay, yeah.
I wasn't with the company by the time they actually released that Weltzeit, and Alon and Dala from Ace, they did all of that themselves. But we'd kind of decided before I left that a black dial, an entirely black dial, would be the way to go. But beyond that, I didn't have anything to do with that one. They put the three crosses from the Amsterdam flag on the dial at 3 o'clock, and that was a cool thing to do.
Very cool. So this was back in 2018, yeah?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, well, that would have been a little bit later, I guess. Like,
and it's now 2021.
Yeah,
that leaves a big gap of, by my mathematics, 3 years.
Amazing.
So what happened in then? How was the project resurrected for the Hague? And
what did happen? That's a very good question. I mean, everyone's blanked 2020 from their minds, right? But that's when it really came back to life. So what happened? I left NOMOS at the end of 2018, I guess. I think. End of 2019. That was right. End of 2019. Okay, yeah. And I started with Fratello right at the start of 2020, just a couple of months before this.
I remember the day you found out.
Of course, yeah, we saw each other, right, yeah. That's a trough, was it, in Manchester? Long time ago.
I think we were actually in the Moon Under the Water, the Weatherspoons.
Oh, Dave's favourite pub, lovely. It's really not his favourite pub. Okay, so I started working for Fratello in January 2020, and at that time, Fratello was trying to up its involvement with brands on special edition projects. And having worked with many brands, it made sense for me to, step in and try and negotiate some new ideas. And so we went through the Minase project, which was a nice success. We went through the Chapek project, which went very well as well, and then the NOMOS project, which started almost as soon as I got my feet under the table at Fratello, because I was keen to bring this model to life, is now here upon us in the autumn of 2021. So we started the conversation twixt Fratello and NOMOS, I would guess probably late 2020, and we really started working in earnest on it. We got it all green lit about 7 or 8 months ago, so start of 2021. And I had my design ready-made, submitted it to NOMOS, got a few changes requested.
So what were these changes? I think it's quite interesting because we've always been quite kind of transparent with our viewers and our readers that it takes a long time from conception to completion of a watch project, even when you've got an idea already formed, like you have with the NOMOS. But of course, behind the scenes, there are going to be a lot of different little stages where things get tweaked, things get kind of pulled out, some things maybe get put in. So I think that's quite interesting to maybe kind of give us a little bit of insider knowledge on what didn't make the cut, maybe what was a late addition.
Well, I've been really lucky with the 3 projects that I've run this year so far. Most of them have been accepted without too many tweaks to the original design. And I would regard the process that we went through with NOMOS as an extremely painless process. I thought it was a fantastic mutual effort to reach something we were both happy with very quickly. But there were changes, perhaps more changes with this one, really, numerically speaking, than there were with the Minase and the Chapek put together, because those concepts were a little less ambitious in some ways. So the first thing I was adamant had to exist was the Panda dial.
Yeah, of course.
That was the one thing that I needed to see out of this project, and everything else thereafter was kind of flexible. So a common change to make when you're doing a Weltzeit special edition is to take the new city name, so in our case The Hague, which replaces Berlin on the dial, and make that whatever your accent colour is, normally red, sometimes blue, gold, whatever. I didn't want to do that, which I think NOMOS was quite keen about. Because
did you try? Did you see what it looked like?
I had a look, yeah. So I was really adamant that the shade of orange I wanted to use in this was RAL 2005, which is exactly the same shade of orange that NOMOS used with the Neomatic Champagne models. It was more present on the first edition Champagne models from 2015 because Neomatic itself was printed in this RAL 2005.
I know there are going to be people out there like me. What does RAL 2005
Oh, right, so it's
mean?
a colour code, right? So it's a paint code. So most people probably have heard of Pantone.
Yep.
Or
hex codes.
Hex codes, exactly. So it's just another one. It's generally used more in engineering and heavy industry.
Right. Okay.
But some manufacturers prefer to use RAL.
Okay. Cool.
And that's a good question, because I talk in these numbers, I talk in Pantone codes as if I expect everybody to know exactly what 1495C is. It's peach, by the way. But that's not the orange we wanted for this one. We wanted a really hot orange, a vivid, bright, blazing orange. And
one that would burn into your retinas.
Exactly. Now the orange inspiration was not just because NOMOS had used it before on the Neomatics and also on the hand of a Club Campus 36, which I also own, lovely watch, but because we're Dutch. We're a Dutch brand.
We are.
Fratello is a Dutch brand.
We are here right now in The Hague.
We are in The Hague, yeah.
Yes.
So my watch is telling me exactly what time it is and where we are, which is a nice combo. So that was the thing. I needed the orange, but I was desperate to have it this hot orange. Now, luckily, my tastes aligned with a good sort of branding justification, because it's an orange already on NOMOS's books. Yeah. So, this wasn't a new colour. It was something they could just pull from an existing catalogue. I knew they could use it. There are no excuses, really.
So at least it wasn't a completely new colour they were having to develop. It was something that was already in their catalogue, and it was easy to kind of pull into becoming a part of the project.
So it's on brand, it pulls these 2 ranges, or 3 ranges together, in fact. All the Neomatic models from 2015, and then the later ones, they did have orange accents, but not quite as many, and also the Club Campus Fascinating.
And I guess it's something you and I have spoken about previously, that it's very important with these limited editions that some people seem to think that suddenly we just have a completely blank canvas and we can do whatever we want, but it's really obviously really important to actually make sure what we're doing stays on brand. And I guess as small a detail as it may seem, using this one particular colour was quite important.
I mean, it's massive. I could write a book on branding and
Coming soon.
Oh, goodness me, yeah, new to the Fratello shop. Rob Nuds bores everybody to sleep in 900 pages. But yeah, I mean, it's massively important. As I like to say, when we take on these partnerships with brands, the way we view ourselves is as temporary custodians of the brand.
Yes.
And we have to be respectful of it. We have to stay within the parameters and sell the same message, talk in the same way, say something slightly different. It's really hard to do that. It's like learning another language.
Yeah, it really, really is.
It takes a bit of time, it takes a bit of touch, it takes the ability to see like the things in between what's in black and white on paper in front of you. And you're right, the process is a bit of a back and forth. You know, you give something almost to have it taken away, because you have to sort of barter and trade your way to a satisfactory conclusion for both sides.
It's a negotiation.
It's a negotiation, a very friendly one, it has to be. You know, like these partnerships in watchmaking, they don't work if you try and get each other over a barrel. It's all about eye-level communication and, you know, bringing something that is full of joy and motivated by joy to the public in a joyful manner. And, you know, it's fun. Should be fun. You just have to know what you're doing, otherwise it can very quickly become frustrating and annoying. Luckily, NOMOS knows what they're doing. So you asked, did I try this colour for the Hague text?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And there is...
Was it just...
Well, you know, the thing is, neon colours are really good against dark backgrounds.
Yeah.
They blaze against dark
Does
backgrounds.
that contrast it?
Right. They can get a little lost against light backgrounds. Worse still, they can get a little lost against grainy backgrounds, like something that diffuses the light around them. So you need a hard edge for neon to really have like its full effect. And I noticed this with the champagne sunburst styles on the Neomatics. The orange was very much an enjoyable colour from more of a feeling sense. You got like the sense of its presence more than you were able to really see it, and more than you were able to really read what it said. And the same was true of the galvanic coating on the silver dials.
Okay, yeah.
So I thought, let's keep this clean, let's keep it simple, let's keep the orange to a minimal. I wanted it to be the triangle at 3 o'clock, and I did consider at one point making the seconds hand the same bright orange as we found on the Club Campus 36.
Okay, cool. But I guess is that a little bit close to the Club Campus then?
No, I don't think that's really an issue. I mean, the Club Campus and the Weltzeit are worlds apart, not just in terms of aesthetics, but also probably potential buyers. You know, they're very different types of watch, although I do have them both, so maybe that's a bad thing.
So what made you kind of decide to cut that? Was that your decision, or was that one of NOMOS's ideas, or was it a mutual one?
That one was mine because I had bigger fish to fry at the time. I had this idea to put a windmill on the dial at 3 o'clock.
A windmill,
which was very
cool.
whimsical, and it was very cute. And I thought, when I looked at it all together with the orange hand, I thought this is a bit much for this watch.
Okay.
And it may be, there is an idea in my mind of how to bring a lot of these more eccentric components together in a way that will work. But it'd be
eccentric ideas?
One or two, my darling. But it would be a muddled message, you know?
Okay, yeah.
So this watch, it doesn't have to be everything at once, but it has to be something, and it has to be something 100%. It has to be full throttle, whatever the heck it is. And I thought this has the potential to be such a classic, reserved watch that it could exist alongside the two core models, the white and the blue dials, as just a regular piece in the collection. And that really, for me, marks a massive success when you do a collaboration like this.
That's the point you've raised in one of our many chats before, that with any kind of limited edition design that we work on, one of the key kind of features is it has to fit within, like you say, the brand's kind of core collection. It has to look like it's it could have been a regular model.
Right. Context is everything.
Yeah.
Context is everything in watchmaking from top to bottom of it. And every brand is aware of its own context, its own position within the wider context, and then what it has to do within its own narrative to spin a story that makes sense to the people that have been following it from day one. We don't want to go too crazy, don't want to go too out there. There have been some very eccentric NOMOSes in the past, some designed by NOMOS's hand, others designed by external parties, and they've been great, fun pieces. And like I say, I have an idea of something similar in that vein, but this time, you know, with this first model, the one piece I can guarantee that NOMOS is going to make with us, I wanted to get it as close to perfect as I thought it could be.
And I guess it's also a way that you're able to finally kind of get that closure on the design that you've had all these years that you know is going to work, and I guess it's nice to be able to kind of see this come into fruition and actually on your wrist as we're talking.
I mean, it's a great pleasure, it really is, and it is very satisfying, and it's a huge sigh of relief, because I could have been barking up the wrong tree, I could have been wrong, you know. I didn't know that it would work, I believed it would work, and I had that faith, and NOMOS were gracious and kind enough to reward that faith that I had in the design with the model being brought to life. And you know, we went through some other changes in the design process. Of course, the windmill was sacrificed for the Panda. It was almost like a trade-off, like they'll give me the Panda but you can't have the windmill because the windmill's crazy. And I was like, I know the windmill's crazy, that's fine. I kept the orange Hague and I kept the orange hand away from the design because I thought they would have been distractions and they would have...
That's fair, yeah.
Look, it would have looked cool. It would, no doubt about it, but you know, this isn't the last watch NOMOS is ever going to make. Hopefully it's not the last watch that they'll make with Fratello. There's time and scope to explore those ideas elsewhere, but yeah, I think the older I get and the more time I spend in the industry and the more patient I become, which, you know, I don't move very quickly ever, you know, I'm
That's
almost...
just age.
It's just age, right, and my terrible knees, but you know, I'm moving at a glacial pace most of the time, but it's not because I'm slow, it's not because I'm as conservative as it seems sometimes from the outside, it's because I'm patient, I wait and I watch, and I think there is going to be a right time for everything. We don't need to throw the kitchen sink at the first opportunity we get to design a watch, because we're better than that, and the brand deserves better than that from us. And yeah, the orange took a little bit of fighting for, it did, because the first sort of redraft that came back had a black 24-hour wheel and a red triangle again.
Okay.
So there was a lot of black on the dial.
Yeah.
It was like, to me, I was like, wow, I can't believe that like this is an option, because it's almost gone like way beyond the whole sort of like Panda thing to something else. It looked mega futuristic. I thought it was cool, but I was like, nah, this is not the vision that I really had. And so I dug my heels in at that point, because I'd been happy to sort of let the windmill slide, because I knew, like we said, it's a bit gimmicky, and it certainly would have marked as a special edition that couldn't have sat alongside the two core models so comfortably. But yeah, to take that black the black 24-hour disc away, put the white one back in, and to really insist that no, this has to be orange. The triangle at 3 o'clock has to be orange, and to get the right color and to get the right shade was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And I only saw the watch for the first time
this morning.
Today.
Yeah.
It was today, goodness. I've looked at it many times since, and yeah, I couldn't be happier with it. I think they smashed it.
I remember when I think I actually saw it in hand before you did this morning, which just sacrilege really, but I think I do genuinely think the first word that came out of my mouth was wow. It is a striking watch, and without wanting to sound a bit biased, the blue was my favourite before, but this one has taken the top of the list now. So if I was to want to get one of these for myself, tell me how would I do that?
So this watch is going to be released on the 30th of September at 6 a.m. Central European time. You only have a limited opportunity to get it because there's only 25 pieces being made, and they're going to retail for 4,620 euros, including VAT. But of course, that will vary a little bit depending on your location within Europe or elsewhere in the world. Okay,
and you can get that from shop.fratello.com, and we hope to see you very soon. Thanks again for watching along. Huh?
Subscribe for more.
Oh, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon.
I'll do that bit. And you can find that on shop.fratello.com.
We hope to see you very soon.
Just now, we just made it up.
We're having a moment.
We have moments sometimes.